Today we have a different unscheduled episode, mostly in response to a recent Panorama programme about bullying in swimming in some high-profile swimming schools. Mount Kelly wasn't referenced in the Panorama programme at all, but nevertheless the school wanted to be open and fully transparent to everybody. So we're about to hear from Emma Collings-Barnes, Director of Swimming at the school. I had a chance to ask her about the coaching values, what she has set up at Mount Kelly, and what makes a good, safe and balanced swim school programme. Let's hear from her now. Emma, thank you for joining us on this episode of the podcast. How are you today?
No, thanks for having me. Yeah, very well. Been up since 4:30. We just finished in the pool. So, yeah, it's a pleasure.
Busy day, but I imagine a fairly typical day for you. Now, let's jump straight into this episode because obviously there was a Panorama programme on television recently and it was exposing some of the troubling accounts of bullying and toxic cultures in elite school swimming environments. Now, when you took over as Director of Swimming at Mount Kelly, tell me what some of the core values were that you wanted to embed just to ensure that it was a very different kind of environment for people who swim at Mount Kelly.
Sure. So, yeah, in 2018, I took over. I've actually been in the programme since 2012, so just after the Olympics. And what was screamingly obvious is that we did need to put some real core values in place, and not just for the swimming programme, for across the whole school. So we did quite a lot of work on, what it means to be a Mount Kelly swimmer, what does it mean to be a Mount Kelly pupil, and rather than focusing on what those values necessarily mean in the pool, we focused on the person. All right. So, what would we like to see as some of the main takeaways from people that come to Mount Kelly in 10 years' time? So we put together a set of values which are plastered all over the school and, the swimming pool environment, and then actively did some big culture piece. And I think, when you're setting a culture in a program, it's all very well and good putting a set of values on a piece of paper, sticking them on the wall and then walking past them every day. But you've got to try and create, a concept, an understanding of why they're there and why it's important to us as a foundation. So we went very hard on culture. So we introduced things such as the Mount Kelly mantra. And every fortnight, I looked at maybe an active topic that maybe some of the things that as a swimming program we were struggling with in that particular time, and we'd find a little mantra, and then we would get together as a team and we'd talk through that mantra, and explain specifically why we're talking about it, and then how they can apply that in their everyday life. Because I think one thing that maybe gets missed across swimming programs is that actually a lot of the work you can do on yourself outside the pool. If you're holding yourself accountable and you've got a good set of values and you're really doing the work before you walk through the door, they then transfer into the pool. All right. So we did a lot of work on that, a lot of work on team togetherness, we had a captaincy team, a leadership team that all had very independent jobs. It wasn't just, right, here's your two captains, bow down and worship to them. We recognise that everybody has their own strengths. And therefore, we had a group of 8 that all took a section of what they wanted to develop, and it was very much on their strengths and what they were passionate about. Mm-hmm. And then really did a lot of work on bridging the gap between where a swimmer is and where the coaching staff is. So that leadership team very much acted as that bridge. So it took a couple of years. By the sort of post-COVID, we kind of got to a position where hopefully there was always someone that an athlete could talk to, whether it was house parent, tutor, matron, captaincy team, leadership team, or just a mate. And then pretty much had an open door policy on campus where we have a building and we are there all the time. So there's always someone there, whether it's Nikki, our operations manager, or one of the coaching team, or me, and we just have an open door policy. And we very much ensured they understood if they were having a tough day, if they were having challenges in the classroom, if they felt overwhelmed at any point, that they could just come down and have a chat, and not even necessarily chat about what's going on for them, just have an environment where they can decompress for 5 minutes. And it has really created quite a nice vibe. And I would say that the work we did initially has created what we call the Mount Kelly family now. It does very much feel like a family, like a home away from home.
Okay, it's really good to hear all of this. Tell me more about some of these practical steps. I'm thinking about, how the changes have come about sometimes triggered by other things, such as the White Review, which I understand came from the world of gymnastics originally. Just tell us a little bit about the origins of the White Review and a little bit more about how the school has responded to those recommendations.
Yeah, sure. So obviously, the White Review was in relation to gymnastics. Obviously, not a sport that's something that we do at Mount Kelly, but it was very important that we listened and we paid attention to that. And what we did was we sat down with the White Review, and then there was a group of us sat down and just said, well, where does Mount Kelly sit in that? Is this something that we do or don't do? Is that something that we need to evolve? Should we be concerned? And actually, once we'd come out of that, there was a few minor things that maybe we addressed and thought, actually, yeah, we need to flip this on the head a little bit. But the majority of it was we'd already set the standards, back in 2018 and done the work. And actually, we were in a position where we didn't feel that any of that was anything that we delivered here at Mount Kelly. I think one of the main parts of that as well was creating a coaching team that was right. I think, you can be a good coach, you can understand swimming, you can understand the science of it, but do you have the soft skills to work in an environment like this? Because you can be the best in the world at that, but if you don't understand how to build relationships, how to find respect in that relationship, how to work with a young child who has going through teenage years, it's not going to work in this environment at all. So we spent a time to really make sure that, when there was a job coming up, that we employed the right person at the right time. And then the other thing that we then considered was, well, thinking around the same concept of what's that person do, what's their strengths, getting to know them as a not just as a coach but as a person, and what are their strengths, and then using them in the department with their strengths rather than working on their weaknesses. Everyone's got weaknesses, and I think they're weak for a reason. Let's just focus on the positive. And once we got that in place, we very much had a coaching team that had sort of areas of expertise in everything. So, I don't pretend to know everything. I'm not great with maths and spelling and things like that, but I do have an assistant director that is absolutely is a boss at that. Whereas I'm really good at developing relationships with people and on all those soft skills, and we all bounce off each other really well. And then what that does is it creates an environment that we really like to be in. I go to work with my friends. There's no necessarily any hierarchy. Yeah, okay, fine. I have a director of swimming, but we've got expertise in this room that's better than me at certain areas. So we just have a nice environment to work in, and then that spreads down. That spreads into the athletes. They can see how relaxed we are with each other. They can see that, if they don't want to speak to me, they've got someone else to speak to. If there's an area of their athletic development that they want to develop, they have people to do that. They don't necessarily have to go to their group coach. There are other people that they feel like that they can go and speak to. So it was very much sort of top down. We had to get right. And I think the other thing it does open, the open door policy that I mentioned. It also it's created trust. What I try and encourage with the staff and the swimmers is that not everybody's perfect. No one's going to get it right all the time. So if there's something that is bugging you and nagging you, let's have a conversation. There's no problems. There's only ever solutions. And if you're feeling comfortable to talk about it, we can get there quicker. And it's been really nice to see, say, some of the coaches and swimmers. I know this sounds ridiculous, but to see them try and fail. As in, like, I've got an idea. Let's try this, and just let them run with it. And sometimes it takes off and it's brilliant, and they can take ownership of that and have a massive pat on the back for it. But also sometimes it doesn't quite work. But they've had that opportunity they've had that voice. They've been allowed to go with it and not be belittled or feeling like they shouldn't have said anything in the first place. So yeah, it's been really quite a journey over the past sort of 7 years. But I think we're in a really good place now.
Okay, so when I asked you about values, you mentioned about focusing on people. You've just told me about the environment where you're working, and that feeds down from a top down. You mentioned that people are quite relaxed with each other. Talk to me a little bit about getting that right balance between the people and performance, because one of the themes in the Panorama program was that blurring of boundaries between performance pressure and pupil welfare. Tell me a bit about how Mount Kelly strikes that right balance between high performance and a healthy, rounded experience for young swimmers.
I think what what you've got to realize is that this is their experience. It's not my experience. Yes, okay, this is my life as well, and we all want to be successful. But this is some of the most influential years of a person's life, and the end goal isn't necessarily in 10 years' time they look back and go, "Oh, I was extremely fast." That's not what they're going to remember. What they're going to remember is they look back and go, they were the best years of my life. And I think that's the bit that drives us. So stop thinking about performance, take your eyes off that for a second, and deal with the person you've got in front of you. And in our swimming squad, not everybody wants to go to the Olympics, and that's great. That's fine. That adds layers to the environment that we're creating. So whatever your goal, whether it's to just get a little bit more efficient in your freestyle, whether it's to make a county final, whether it's to just enjoy your time here, or to win an Olympic gold medal, that's all valued, and it's all adding up and contributing to an experience. So seeing the person before the athlete is probably the main thing that we try and do. And when you understand that this isn't necessarily everything to an athlete or to a pupil, it's part of their journey, but it's not necessarily everything. It gives you, and then you're seeing that person in front of you, it gives you a bit more context of what's right and wrong. Some athletes, it's absolutely everything to them. It's all they want to do, and you kind of have to rein them in a little bit and say, hang on a second, this is a school, not a swimming program. You've got to actually go to your lessons, and you've got to actually smash your exams. And then some people are like, no, I just enjoy doing it. So then it gives you a little bit more context of where to go next. So, if an athlete's walking through the door and they've got a major championships in 4 weeks' time and they're injured, and their panic is, but I've got this in 4 weeks' time, you've got to understand that it's really important to them. They're going to feel a bit panicky. Let's compromise. Let's go, right, well, the physio's saying you need to rest up for at least a minimum of 3 days. Let's do that. Let's maybe take that down to 2 days and then start to get in, but scale what you're doing in the water. If it's an ankle injury, let's just do pull for a little bit, and we'll start with half an hour or an hour. We'll keep the feel of the water. We have Josh in our athletic development department that can also adapt things, and it's about managing their panic around it. So it's just a case of making sure that you're treating everybody individually, and then be guided by them as well. At a young age, sort of year 6, 7, 8, okay, you've got your triad of where it goes. It's the parent and the coach that tends to lead what's going on. But when they get to sort of year 10, year 11, the athlete needs to come to the center of that and start leading things, and letting them have an opinion and have a say. And there's been some times that maybe, you've got a really demotivated athlete, everything's feeling just a little bit too much. I've said to them, right, okay, what is it that you want to do this week? Do you want to write your own sessions? Would that be fun? And we've had athletes come in and go, yeah, that'd be great. Like, actually, that's better than me just disappearing for a few days to try and get my head straight. I'm going to write my own sessions. And, long term, that's probably not a great thing to be doing. But short term, it's just sparked their interest in it again. And it's felt like, actually, this is fun. So, yeah, so you just got to be really flexible, and you've got to treat everyone individually. There's such a wonderfully complex amount of characters that you're dealing with. It's not one size fits all. You can't do it that way. It just doesn't work.
Now, of course, you've introduced some fairly significant changes since arriving at Mount Kelly. Can you share some of the most impactful initiatives or different structures that you've put in place to create an environment that's safe and supportive and inclusive?
Yeah, sure. So one of the things that we really needed to do is set really clear guidance around criteria. As much as I'm saying, we've got to treat everybody individually. When you've got 180 swimmers, you need to be able to put them somewhere, and then understand why they're there in that program. So once we'd done that, we had a structure that I felt that had a bit of longevity. So we've now not really changed our structure for about 5 years. And within that structure, there is quite a lot of fluidity. So it might be that, you're coached by one particular person, but there are elements of what you need in the pool and outside the pool that needs to be flexible. And you might need to swim a couple of times a week with someone different or a different squad. Or it might be that within that squad, say you've got 8 sessions available to you. You're a middle distance swimmer. The mold is, let's do 8 2-hour sessions in that week. But that athlete just will not cope with that. Yes, okay, they swim hundreds, 200s, 400s in the pool, and that's where their forte is. But 8 sessions of 2 hours is just never going to work for them. They don't cope with mornings, or they don't cope with late evenings. They really struggle to hold themselves together technically for long periods of time. So then you adapt and you change that up a little bit, and you trying to put into a place an individualized program. The other thing that maybe we weren't doing very well before was understanding that we have multi-sport athletes. You know, we have athletes that are serious about their swimming, but they're also, the reason why they're good at swimming is because they're great all-rounders. You know, they have strengths in hockey and in rugby or netball, and you know, your coaching challenge is, can you put together something that, yes, fits within your criteria, but also ticks every box for them, so they don't feel that they're letting anybody down. When you are talented sportsman, sportswoman, sometimes you can feel a bit like that, because you want to do everything, but actually you're ending up burning the candle at both ends, and you have to then take into consideration and rein them in a little bit and say, no, hang on a second, you've got 12 months in you doing this. You're going to be completely burnt out in 12 months' time. You want longevity in this sport. And then speaking about longevity, I think the main thing that has probably really helped us take off is understanding what we do best. What we do is grassroots sports and youth development, and understanding that that is our forte and that's the right thing for these people in this particular time, and not getting all greedy with it, as in we're going to start a senior program and we're going to try and retain swimmers post 18 and you know, and we're going to do, you know, keep people on to the next Olympic Games. No, our place is to do a really good job whilst they're here at Kelly, open the doors that need to be opened so they can maybe end up being the best swimmer or athlete or person post Mount Kelly. You know, we recognise very much that they're probably not going to be at their best whilst they're currently at the school. And if we open the right doors, they will go on to be the best after Mount Kelly. So I think that concept can be quite difficult for a lot of coaches and coaching programs, because I mean, I'm going to say it, a lot of coaches make it about them. It's about them and their career and what can this person do for me, and that's going to, you know, if that person does this really well, then that's going to open the door for me. Flip it on the head. Stop thinking about that. Think about the person that is just basically the parents have just said, okay, here's our child, you know, have a great time. You've got to take that responsibility seriously. And I think, you know, for me, maybe what was the biggest sort of light bulb moment for me was becoming a mother myself. I had my son in 2021, and I always think, before I have every conversation, before I have make any move, I think, what kind of person would I want in my son's life? And I try and be, and I think everybody in the coaching staff tries to be that person. And I think that is something maybe that you don't realise until you become a parent. Some of my predecessors have always said that to me and said, you know, it's different. It hits different when you have a child. And I do definitely agree with that.
Emma, let's talk a little bit about power dynamics and gender. The Panorama programme touched on this and talked about how this can shape experiences in elite sport.
Yeah.
You're a female leader in swimming. Tell me about any encounters that you've had, if you're okay with this, with, you know, regards to bullying or anything toxic in your own career.
Yeah, so I mean, I was really lucky to, when I was an athlete, to have a really great coach. You know, Ian Armiger, who took over Loughborough University at the time. He was a great mentor, great coach. I think my challenges first came when I hung up my goggles and decided to go back to coaching. And I think, to give you an example of some of the things that I've come across, the first opportunity I had to speak to quite a huge name in coaching and in swimming, a worldwide renowned name. I had this opportunity to sit in a room with a bunch of coaches and speak to him about swimming. This was when I was 22, 23.
Mm-hmm.
I was the only female in the room. Sat down, the conversation went, and I thought, right, I'm going to be confident enough to ask a question here. And I asked the question, and the response was, what are you doing here? You're supposed to be in the kitchen cooking us dinner.
No.
Yeah. And that was the first time I've really kind of been out of my bubble, because, in my bubble of being a swimmer and then being at Loughborough University is very much a bubble, and it's all positive, great experience. That was the first time I really experienced something outside that bubble. And,
Wow.
if you can imagine a young aspiring female coaches, bearing in mind not many females do coach anyway, to have the first experience of someone successful in the sport say that to you, I was like, well, what am I doing here? Like, is he right? Like, am I mad to think that I can coach to a good level?
You start to
Um,
question yourself.
yeah. I thought, God, maybe I shouldn't be here. And then I think again, I just sat down and I sat with it for a little bit. I sat with that discomfort. I took on a job at a local swimming club rather than working at Loughborough University, because I
Oh,
thought that
wow.
that was the level that I needed to be at.
No.
And then I just thought, I'm quite driven. I have my moments of insecurity, but at one point I just sat down and went, no, I'm not having that.
Hmm.
I'm going to make myself the most successful person I possibly can be, and I'm
Go
going to
you.
ignore everything anyone has to
Hmm.
say.
Hmm.
And I think that's been the theme over the years. I've come across some really nasty people. Some of the comments that I used to get thrown at me, and it's around my sexuality as well. I am a gay female coach, and if I haven't just loaded a load of people enough to throw at me, I'm gay as well. So it's like, but it just. I'm really grateful for all the negative experiences. I had some really negative experiences. I went to my first job and got it from all sorts of ends, decided that wasn't right, and I was going to find my own environment. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go out there, find a place that I can create and feel accepted. And
Mm.
that's how I ended up at Kelly. And I had a great boss at that time who, sexuality or being a female coach wasn't even it wasn't even a conversation piece, which was great. And I think when I got some quite spiteful comments from a parent back in the day,
Gosh.
my boss at the time went, "What has that got to do with anything?" and stuck
Mm.
up for me. And in that environment, I was like, "Oh my God, maybe I've found my people."
Mm.
I've never been backed like that before. So then it just went on, and the environment here we have at Kelly is, again, it's that family. It's like, everyone's very accepting. Everyone, tends to see what you're good at, not what anything else around it, all the fluff. And like I said, I just kind of worked on finding my people, finding the right coaches at the right times with the right values.
Hmm.
And if you came across a coach or an athlete maybe that just didn't quite have those values, I'm not sure this is the right place for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which was lovely to be able to do. And again, when I was pregnant with my son, the challenges around having a child in a gay family is obviously evident. So when I was pregnant, I was just absolutely made up. It was just the most incredible thing. Never
Mm.
thought I'd be able to ever be in that position. So I
Beautiful.
took to Twitter
Mhm.
to announce my sort of pregnancy. Not that anyone cares about what I'm doing, but like, you have that moment. And off the back of that, one of my new coaches came to me and said, "Look, I need to let you know I am part of this WhatsApp group, and there's been some awful things been said about you and your unborn child on there.
Gosh.
I'm coming to you because I'm out of that environment now. I work here and I love being here, and I have the same values of you. I'm leaving those people behind and I am standing with you," which was a beautiful moment.
Mm.
And it was horrible. It was really
Mm.
horrible. Now,
Mm.
moving forward, I ended up getting an written apology at some point. But I don't really get involved in any of it now. I've got my people, I've got my program. The kids here are incredible. They're wonderful. They're brilliant with Lawson. They've all got the same sharing values about just basically being a decent human being. And we've created something really special off the back of that. So I'm really grateful for all those negative experiences, because it has made me see that there is a right and a wrong way. There is a way to deliver a message in a way that lands with someone instead of just flat out bullying them. there is a way to respect another human's being's hopes and dreams, and do your best to get it right for them. And I think that is the main thing that makes Mount Kelly so unique. It's really rare to have this kind of environment, and I'm very blessed.
Emma, thank you for sharing all of this, and especially for sharing your own personal stories like that. I really appreciate you opening up on this podcast. I'm keeping an eye on time. I've just got one more question, actually. And this is actually on behalf of any parents who might be listening to this right now, or young athletes themselves. They might be reevaluating what they want from a school swimming program. What would you say makes Mount Kelly a model of what school swimming should look like in 2025?
I think the main thing is, historically, we haven't got everything right, but we have been diligent enough to know that we've not got everything right, and we've made active change. And I think one of the best things I can say is, it's not all private school swimming programs are like that. And if you're interested in it, ask one of the swimmers. I think that's it. I can stand here and sell Mount Kelly until I'm blue in the face. Ultimately, actions speak louder than words. Speak to someone that's had the environment, that's currently at the school, or even was at the school 10 years ago, and ask them their feelings and thoughts. And I think that's just open and honest feedback. That is just finding out about whether, we say we've got happy, healthy swimmers. Actually find out from their mouths. And if you want to find out more, again, just pick up the phone, come and visit, come and see it. We've got loads of people that come down and think, oh, that might be for me, and come here and love it, but actually come here and go, do you know what? I'm not sure that's right for me, and that's okay. And we keep that door open and say, private school program might not be right for you, but if you need any help, that's fine. We will help anybody that gets in touch where we can. Doesn't necessarily mean you have to come to school here, but yeah, I would just say, just ask people, ask the athletes, ask the swimmers, see what kind of experience they've had, and then make your judgment from there.
And actually, just on that, going back to episode 5 on the podcast, we had Barnaby talking about his swimming experience at school. So that might be a good place to start.
Oh, what a hero. He is an absolute hero. We love Barney, and he's doing some incredible things.
He really is. And I love that invitation as well, Emma, for people to reach out and get in touch with you if they've got any questions, any concerns, especially if they've watched the Panorama program and they just want to find out a little bit more about life at Mount Kelly.
Yeah, definitely. Give us a call.
Well, Emma, I just want to say thank you again for being here. I really appreciate you giving up your time to be here to explain to us what life is like for swimming at Mount Kelly.
Thanks for having me.
Well, a shout out to Emma for being with us on this episode of the podcast. If you did watch the programme on television, and if after hearing this podcast episode you still have any questions, then do take up her invitation to get in touch. She's right there to address any concerns you might still have. Thank you for listening to this episode. Bye for now.